Welcome to Sleeping with Sarah. I'm Sarah Albritton, and I'm in bed with Justin Herman.
Hey, guys.
How'd you sleep last night, Justin?
Terribly, actually.
Terribly?
It was an homage to the podcast theme, I felt. But yes, nightmarish. Terrible.
Oh, God.
Bad sleep.
Do you have that often, or?
I think it's getting worse. I think that since the pandemic, I've never fully gotten back to like a normal sleep. I don't know if there's like an underlying anxiety that's never fully recovered for me, or it's a social collapse of society as we know it. It's in the backdrop of my mind, but I'm not sure. But anyways, sometimes.
Yeah. Is it a recurring nightmare you have, or?
No, it was more nightmarish in experience than it was a specific nightmare.
Yeah.
It was just bad. I just sleep poorly more than ever before in my life, actually.
Oh, that's tough.
You wouldn't be able to relate, so.
Well, I mean, I don't have good sleep quality,
Right.
So I could sleep for 11 hours or 12 hours or 15 hours, and I wake up feeling the same as if I had slept for 8 or none. So that's the difference with me, is because I don't have the quality. I could just go straight into the dream part for the most part, and then so I'm mostly in REM a lot more than most people.
No, do you use like Fitbits or like Apple Watches to monitor this stuff? And are your numbers completely different from everybody else's?
No, a lot of those apps tend to use averages from normal human sleep things, and it's not actually monitoring your current sleep, so it's not accurate to use. There are a couple ones that are accurate, but those tend to be the more expensive ones, and I have not used those. So
Gotcha.
And I don't know, like I still wonder. I have an Apple Watch. I like having the Apple Watch, but I wouldn't. I don't know, having 24/7 on my wrist.
I went with the Oura Ring because I didn't want the watch. I wanted to wear a child's watch, as everybody can tell. That was a choice that I made to go analog. But I got this for sleep. I got this because I started sleeping terribly and I wanted to monitor my sleep.
Oh.
And
that I haven't done the research on that sleep thing, so I'm not saying that the Oura Ring is not. By the way, if Oura Ring wants to sponsor me and send me a free one, I will, do that.
So I keep plugging the Oura Ring. I was actually directing a documentary series for Netflix about the future, and I was interviewing a futurist and a technologist who was wearing this ring. And then once we finished the general interview, I asked her about it, and that's how I learned about the Oura Ring. And this was a person who has like studied this technology and decided that this, to her, was the best, had the best ability to read your sleep metrics and provide data that she found useful. So that was what made me do this over the ring. So I had like an expert kind of soft pitch me in the way that I've soft pitched everybody listening to this podcast.
No, that's cool. I like it because it feels like it's less technology on your body parts. Like I wonder in the future, like, are we all gonna have wrist cancer in like 20 years?
Yeah.
It's.
I mean, we all do now, don't we? It's not like cancer is like an obscure disease.
Yes.
Yes. It's almost like we've done something to poison ourselves, generationally speaking.
And we've decided that it's more convenient to use those things than to worry about our health.
Correct.
God, it is. This is sad. Yeah,
we're doing great. Yeah. You guys want to be sadder listening to a podcast? Or we can go sadder. I can do this. The day my puppy died. I'm kidding.
Why do you wear the child's watch, though?
Okay, so this actually, I bought this because I went to Burning Man last year, and everything's colorful and fun, and mostly I didn't want to like ruin my nice watch. So then I wore this, and then I got back from Burning Man, and I broke my nice watch. I was like, this is who I am now.
I like that. I have never been to Burning Man, but it sounds like an experience. How was it?
It's amazing. I love it. I've been a couple times. You will not sleep there, but that's fun. Eventually, but it's great. I mean, I think I always describe Burning Man as it's a place where people are empowered to be the kindest version of themselves.
Oh.
And it really is. It's a playground. It's like affluent white people cosplaying the utopia. Like it's really like a place where people go and try to execute their idea of what kindness and art and experience can look like.
So even though it's become more popular over the years, you went last year and it still felt that way, that authenticity of kindness?
Listen, Taylor Swift gets more popular over the years. Do people like her music any less? No, she still makes the same music that's still great and still relatable to her audience. It's kind of the same thing. I think things can get popular and still be good, and I don't think its ethos has changed. I think it's a really wonderful experience. But like all things, you have to go into it with the right mindset. If you just try to go because you want Coachella Coachella selfies, you might hate it.
Yeah, but Burning Man is like open mind and like, let's do mushrooms or whatever drugs you want to do. Let's experience it all and let's just meet people and get weird.
Yes, it is a get weird vibe. But like also it is probably the best place on earth to do drugs, but I also am probably the most sober version of myself at Burning Man.
Really?
Because it's like, you got to think of it like I think of it as like a country. It is an 80,000 person city that has a very specific set of rules that gets built, and then you live in it for a week, and then it gets all teared down and taken away. So culturally speaking, it's like its own country. It's got its own energy, its own vibe, its own place, it's its own city. It's like Paris is different than London, which is different than New York, which is different than Black Rock City. So it has this very unique culture that to me is so fun. I don't feel the need to enhance it with drugs. Although when I do, it's amazing. But it's also survivalist camp. Like it's 100 degrees and there are dust storms and you have to bring in all the water that you need to survive and all the things that you need to survive in a really harsh desert environment. So there's also an element for me of just being a weak Jew who's like, okay, I'm not going to let the desert kill me this year. I'm just going to have fun.
Fair.
I try to balance those things.
So what did you bring? Did you like have a car or an RV, or did you just bring a tent? Or
I've always slept in a tent, but you go typically as a camp. Like, so you end up going with a group of people who coordinate your kitchen build, your living room builds, your shade structures, whether or not you're going to build a shower system, how you bring your water in and out. And people spend all year planning for this 1 week because the logistics are insane. Again, it's a city. It's an 80,000 person city with 4-story DJ booths and lights that shoot into outer space. I mean, like the best sound systems in the world get brought in, which means generators have to get brought in, which means crews have to come in and build it and drill this stuff into the ground. Like, it is an incredible, outrageous production for play. It's nuts.
It's the biggest playground then.
It is.
That sounds like fun. Yeah. I love that there are so many art pieces that are kind of just temporary, made just for that. I've always been fascinated by temporary art. In Chicago, every year around winter, they had big ice sculptures. You know, obviously that's temporary. That's not going to be around forever. I've also been to beachside cities that had sand sculptures. I love like the idea of something being temporary because there's a beauty in that it won't last forever and it's okay.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things that really appeals to me about Burning Man.
My stepdad is actually an artist in New York, and he does installations all over the world, and his whole kind of philosophy. I guess I shouldn't speak for his whole philosophy. He's a man that's making art for 50 years, and I'm an idiot. But the thing that I've taken away the most from his art is that there's an impermanence to it, and there's the lack of attachment to it. So he did a project years ago where he works with raw materials, like construction materials, and so he was hired and commissioned to paint these cinder blocks at a construction site where these mini malls were being built, and then the blocks would get installed into the wall in a random pattern by the construction crews, and people would drive by for a week or 2 weeks or however long that exposed wall was out, and they would see this artistic pattern, this fluorescent colored painted wall, and then it would get covered up and be a part of the building. And so his whole philosophy is that to draw attention to the things that make up our world without having an attachment to it being around forever.
Ooh, that's beautiful.
He went to Woodstock, so he's a hippie.
So has he been to Burning Man though as an adult?
No, he hasn't. He would love it. But I think that he's like lived that part of his life. I don't know if he'd be interested. I'm sure he would. I'm sure if he got commissioned to do work there, he would go. I would love to hang out with him at Burning Man.
Right? That'd be cool. Yeah. Like what do you think he would build? Like how big are his pieces? Physically?
I mean, he's done installations across like the entire city of Leipzig, Germany. Like he can do things he's done stuff that are not just like one location, but it all depends on what he's offered. And I've seen things that remind me of his work at Burning Man. People have done art pieces that were never finished on purpose. To like create an intrigue around the process of making art. So I could see him definitely doing something very unique and creative.
I think it'd be fun. Like, I'm not a visual artist in that way. For a while, I did photography, I guess. But like, in terms of like passing, like being like, hey, I'm going to start a painting. I'm going to give it to you and you're going to continue it or you're going to add on to it. And that'd be kind of cool way to see how different artists interpret where it goes.
I mean, isn't that so much of art? Like, that's why I love the production process for TV and film, is because it's kind of that. Like, you almost can make it like a factory. There's the pre-production team, there's the production team, there's the post-production team, and essentially what you're doing is you're always passing the project down that line.
Yeah.
And that collaboration is a beautiful thing. It's TV. It's very easy to think of it as commerce, because it is. TV shows aren't created to be art; they're created to fill the 22 minutes between commercials. But as an artist or a film school student or whatever you are that got you into this business, you are still creating something artistic and with a storyline or a narrative or a vision, and then you're collaborating with camera people and editors and producers and directors.
And would you ever do a documentary at Burning Man, or is that just a sacred place for you to have fun in?
I used to think about it. Enough people have done it that I don't know if I have a unique take that is important enough to me to do it there. You know, I think that I've been making TV and documentary stuff for a long enough that I don't feel the need to document everything that I love in this world. You know, like, to me, a story has to elevate beyond just my own appreciation for it for me to be invested in it. So I don't know. Again, if somebody came to me and was like, "Hey, I want to make a documentary. What's your take?" I would spitball all day, but I don't think I would go and tell that story independently.
Yeah,
it's because it's for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, the older I get, the less I care about sharing everything I think with people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes me the worst stand-up comedian, because that's apparently what we're supposed to do, is be so obnoxiously vulnerable that TikTok loves us. But that's just not I don't know, I've never been that guy. I've never been the guy that wants to just open the floodgates of everything I think and feel.
I don't want to do everything I think and feel. I think there are certain things that it's good to share.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think some people do overshare, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, like, at this point, I think I've shared so much on stage and between the stage and podcasts. It's like there aren't like too many like big secrets I have or anything, you know, pretty much open book in terms of that. But you're right. Some things you do keep for yourself.
Yeah. And listen, I think of myself as an open book. Maybe I'm a liar, but I don't have a lot of secrets, or it's not about even that. It's about whether or not do I think it's necessary to share everything. And you see people who become very successful and then they get pigeonholed into being this very specific type of thing, and that's all they can talk about. And that I see that as sometimes a hindrance. And it depends. It depends on what your definition of success is. If you want to build an audience around a specific topic or a specific trauma or a specific identity, and more power to anybody that wants that. Clearly there's an audience that wants that. I think that is the best part about this digital age of stand-up, that people that don't identify as mainstream can find their people and their audience and their comedians and their heroes, and we have all these new niches, and I think that's wonderful and beautiful. But I don't know. I don't have a need to empty my purse out on the comedy floor all the time.
So you do documentaries primarily. You do documentaries and unscripted stuff. You've been doing that for a while. Let's see. How does it often change what it's going to be about? Because a documentary, you don't know where it's going to be, right? So you don't really know till after you film and you edit it down. So do you ever go into a documentary being like, hey, I think it's going to be about this thing, and oh wow, when I got there, there's really much more interesting stuff over here happening?
Every time.
Every single time?
Every single time.
Oh, so you've never had a documentary where you're like, I think it's going to be about this, and it was actually about that?
Well, I think top line can often stay the same, but everything changes as you learn more about anything, right? Unless you're the expert going into it. I'm trying to think of a good example, but I can't think of a time where it doesn't change, where you don't learn something new. And it doesn't 100% change, but the world changes around you. It's like how you tell a joke 5 years ago and it kills, and then 5 years later it bombs because culture has changed so much that it just doesn't make sense anymore.
Oh, there's some jokes I love telling that would not work anymore. And I'm like, oh, wow, that doesn't work. I
have a whole story that I do about this time where this true story about how I met a girl at a wedding and we got drunk and started hooking up, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody was consenting to what was happening, and she just kept yelling, "Surprise me!" I'd be like, "Are you okay with? Do you want to have sex? Like, is this something you want to do?" And she would say, "Surprise me!" And I'd be like, "That sounds like in 9 months I want to surprise you, and I don't want that." So I wrote this story. It was a real story that happened pre-Me Too era. And I'd never heard a man talk pro-consent on stage before, so I ended up writing this whole bit about being pro-consent and it backfiring against me because I liked being self-deprecating, but I also wanted this kind of theme to be out there. And then the Me Too movement happened, and I started doing the joke, and it's the laughs softened dramatically because people felt like I was pandering. And
there were a lot of people that did pander to that.
Big time. And and I still do this story in my hour, and I still but I've rewritten it a lot because culture has changed and my perspective has changed and the things that I want to say about it have also changed. So it's not a bad thing. It's just fascinating to watch that trajectory.
Yeah. I think that the way people talk about now, we change as people and then we adjust our comedy. We adjust our stand-up.
Yes.
Some people don't. There are still some people that will still do the same jokes for 30 years.
Yes.
And if it works for them, that's great.
Yes.
But I think in the majority of us, as we're growing as people, we adjust.
Yeah. I think it's you have to, and I think so. I don't listen. I understand why people get frustrated that you can't say everything you used to say. I get the frustration, but they're wrong, in my opinion, because the world is changing, and you have to change with it. You want to be an artist, like again, are you in it for the commerce? Are you in it for the art? It should be a Venn diagram of some sort, in my opinion, if you want to make a living doing something. But at the end of the day, it's an art, and you're communicating with a society that has a point of view, and you have to respect that. Because if you don't respect your audience, then why would they respect you?
Oh, yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, that's what I think. But I think it is interesting. Some people do get frustrated, or some people do try. I think a lot of people, when they first start out, try to be controversial just because that's what they see seasoned comics do.
Yes.
And so that's something I think people think that that's what you're supposed to do because that's what they see on TikTok and that's what they see on these things. They're like, oh, well, if I have a heckler, I'm supposed to. And if you're 6 months into stand-up, you can't handle a heckler.
Yes. I mean, people watch Andrew Schultz. He's such a good example, and he's one of the best contrarian comedians. That dude can get on stage and say the most fucked up, anti-woke thing, and then justify it with a punchline that it always works. I mean, he's amazing at it. He's so good, and so many people watch him and say, "That's what I want to do," and they do not understand what he's actually successfully doing.
Yes,
they just see him being controversial, and they want to pull it off too. And it's a thing, and then it's a process and. There's also a world where comics need to be able to fail at doing things like that so that they learn and get better.
Oh, yeah. Well, they either fail and then they're like, oh, I don't want to do it anymore. Or they fail and then they learn and get better.
Right.
Where did you start stand-up?
New York.
You started in New York.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And then when did you move over here?
I've been here about almost 2 years now.
Okay, cool.
So it's still relatively new because I'm not here that often. And it's different.
Different how? Like, do you miss the train? Like, what do you miss?
Oh, I do not miss the subway. What's weird is every now and then I get a ping of missing the subway, and I'm like, oh no, this city is hurting me. That's not good at all, because I should not ever miss the subway. The subway was the bane of my existence. But
you're like, oh, I just miss that specific smell of urine.
Exactly. I mean, it's so funny, man. New York is a better city, and LA is a better lifestyle. And those are two very valid choices for picking a place. New York has a million great things about it, man. New York is... it's such an overwhelming place. There's so much energy. There's so much to absorb, and there's so much to burn you out. And that was my problem, is after 16 years, I was just really burnt out. But I love New York, and I think it's a healthy thing to leave at the same time. Like, New York is a place where you can blame all your problems on New York. Because if you're miserable and depressed, you can be like, yeah, it's the subway, it's the crowds, it's the whatever.
But the thing is, the people that will complain like that are the people that haven't left Manhattan in like 20 years.
Yes.
They're like, I'm going to complain about this, but I'm never leaving.
Yes, and that's what I saw. And like then you move somewhere like LA, and you live in a suburb of a city, and you don't have any of these urban things that are frustrating you day by day, and then you realize if you're still sad, oh, the problem is me.
Yeah.
And that's also important.
Yeah. I think that the constant sunshine does help with the sadness, though.
Yes.
It's like, oh, wow, there's sunshine year-round. And, because from Chicago, you either kind of pick whether you want to go to New York or LA if you're taking stand-up more seriously.
Right.
And I was on the fence, but I think I picked... LA because it was more writer focused and there's more film opportunity there. At the time I was writing more pilot scripts and that sort of thing.
Yep.
None of that's happening right now, but
I love the New York comedy scene. That's like feels like home to me, and I'm still adapting to the LA scene, but there's a lot of value to the different perspective of comedy here. Like, New York, it's such a gig kind of scene where people show up, they do their spot, they say hi, and then they go. But here, everything's so spread out that there is way more of a culture of like hanging out. Like you go to a show, when I go to a show, I expect to hang out with the comics on the lineup in a way that I don't in New York, which actually feels way more communal and way more supportive. So there's a vibe to it that I really like because you're trapped. You go to a show and you're there. People don't bounce to the next one and the next one as often because it's so spread out.
And it's really like New York, you could get like 5-7 sets in a night. In LA, it's like 3 if you're, if you're lucky, if you're if you're more established and they're rearranging the sets for you. But then those are the people that are on TV shows because nobody leaves LA. That's the other thing. It's different. Chicago, people would leave Chicago to go to New York or LA, and I feel like people were in New York for a long time, but then I think eventually they will come to LA.
It would be weirder to be here for 15 years and go to New York unless it's for a specific job, because why would you go and be crammed into a smaller space and a harder lifestyle?
That would be tough, and it's like already it's very expensive here, but it's like if you get something for like rent control or something, you're like, okay, not leaving for a while.
Yeah, for sure. I still regret giving up my apartment in New York 2 years later because the rent was a lot cheaper than everything was after COVID ended.
Ended in quotations. So you say you travel a lot. Where else is this all for documentary stuff?
Yeah, I've always been. I started in travel shows for TV. That was what got me into making TV. When I was 22 and I got out of film school, the first thing I did is I made a travel comedy show pilot, and that helped me get a job producing my first travel show when I was 24.
Oh, fun.
And then that's the thing that I've done throughout my career. Most consistently, that's been my genre.
Were you the host at all, or no?
Just for the pilot I made, yes. For all the other shows, no, I've always been a producer or a director.
So you don't want to be in front of the camera, more behind, or?
I always find performing to be like the cherry on the sundae. Like if I get to direct and write and craft and work with people that I see that have a performative skill set that I don't have, and I get to shape that to make it the best vision of what we're doing, that's my happy place.
Yeah.
And if I get to perform, it's a cherry on top. But it isn't all about performing to me. Again, it's like coming back to comedy and wanting to share. I don't feel the need to be the center of attention all the time. I don't feel like I don't have enough narcissism to be the best comic in the world because I don't care enough about me all the time. And I feel that way with making TV. Like when I work with a great host. I made a HGTV series last year called Freestyle. That was like a home design show, and my host was the best. She was so talented and so easy to work with, and we had such a great relationship. And like to me, I don't care what side of that relationship I'm on. If you have a collaborative experience where everybody from your production assistants to your camera guys to your host are all just working together to make something great, it's just the best feeling.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I haven't watched that many like HGTV. I have an idea of what they do. I've watched the ones that my friends were in, oddly enough. I know somebody that had their backyard redone.
It'd be weird if you're like, sorry, Sarah, I know you have a television show, but fuck you. I'm going to watch this guy build a treehouse. That makes the most sense.
Yeah. Well, it's also weird because when you live in a city like this and you're seeing a design show, it's like, oh, I don't know when I'll be able to own a house.
Yes.
So
I literally have jokes about that.
It's very strange because here it's like I don't think you can get anything for less than $1 million in LA County, right? Yeah. Like maybe on the far outskirts or a place you don't, but it's hard.
Yeah, no, this is not I joke about that all the time. It's how ridiculous it is that I direct shows about people buying homes when I'm a lifelong renter. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I'm the least qualified person to do this because I've always lived in places that are prohibitive.
And it's so hard because I've got family that lives in like places where things are more affordable. Like my brother had a house in Kentucky, and like his mortgage, like what me and my partner pay for rent is like 4 times what his mortgage is in a year. And it's like, that's just the way it is. But it's worth it to live somewhere that's fun, that's like has all the things you want. Like I'm a city person. I like being in a city. I knew that as a kid. Yeah. Like I knew I didn't want to stay where I was. I was like, nope, I'm going to be in school outside Chicago, move there, move here. Yeah. I love cities, so.
I agree. I mean, these are all these choices. My brother's the same. My brother used to live in Rochester, New York, where he bought a house for $45, and like that's an exaggeration, but not by a lot. Yeah. And I mean, he literally, his mortgage was less than $900 a month.
Oh my God.
And it's like that is the most unrelatable piece of information. And I direct house buying shows. Like I can't relate to that. It's crazy. But I would rather be broke forever than live in Rochester, New York. So, like, these are your choices.
Well, yeah, it's because
Don't cancel me, Rochester, New York. I see you out there.
But I think it's just like these little cities where it's like, it's just very expected. It's very like kind of cookie cutter. Everyone's kind of the same way. It's like, oh yeah, your focus is your kids or your focus is your work. And like, that's like your life. Yes. That's it. That's your life. And I think as creative people, we have to go outside of that to do what we find fulfilling.
Yeah, and I think anybody that can create in that environment, good for you. Like, again, I think anything's possible, just what works for you.
Yes, and I'm not saying that people that live in these smaller towns can't create, but I think at a certain point...
Go fuck yourself, small town. You hear me, Rochester, New York? Go fuck yourself.
Put that on a t-shirt. That's your new merch right there. Go fuck yourself, Rochester, New York.
Well, that's better than the merch I currently have. I got heckled when I was in Australia in January. I was in the middle of a show, and I kind of just let one of those like moments pause where like they laughed. I let it die down so I could transition to a new topic. And this woman goes, "Show us your circumcised dick." And I had a lot of questions, and we talked about it.
That's
and it was
a very strange. Is that,
so specific.
It's like is that like a hitting on you kind of heckle? Is it like a?
She
Like, how did she say it? Was she like, "Show us your dick"?
No, that would have made more sense to me. It was kind of like, "Show us your circumcised dick," and I was like, "What?" That was the most soft sell of a. It was crazy. She like 30 seconds later, she said to me, "My husband told me not to drink too much tonight," and so why does anybody do anything in this world? I don't know, but I have friends that
maybe your husband is uncircumcised and she just really wanted to see what it was like.
Well, it's my fault. So like 10 minutes earlier, I was making circumcision jokes, to be fair. I was joking about how in America, I'm just another white guy, but in Australia, I'm diverse because I'm the only guy circumcised for 300 kilometers in the direction, which makes me a unicorn.
And she wanted to, she wanted to find out about the unicorn.
10 minutes later was still thinking about it and said it out loud. And it was now a very funny clip on the internet. But my friends came to stay with me from New Zealand. And when they wanted to get me like a gift to say thank you, so they went and got me booty shorts from Venice Beach that say, "Show us your circumcised dick" on the back. And now those will be for sale on my website. I'm just kidding. I'm not selling anything. But I should.
Yeah, that's great. That's great merch.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But fuck you, Rochester is next. That's number 2.
Yeah, fuck you, Rochester. I mean, like I said, so you never. Did you grow up in a city or a small town?
I didn't, but I'm much more worried right now about how much chest hair I'm showing. Is it too much chest hair? I didn't anticipate. I had an undershirt and I ditched. I'm very. This is the very not Burning Man of me. Sorry. I'm so sorry if everybody's looking at my chest. It's hot in here.
It is.
And so I'm trying to find that balance of airing it out and not answering your question. No, I grew up upstate New York.
Okay.
To answer your question. You can cut literally all of that. I just realized that most of my nipples were showing.
No, I think it's not a big deal. It'll be fine. We're a very positive show. If you feel comfortable with it, we're fine.
Okay, fine. Let's get
but
this
I think that is a question though, and I think a lot of guys are like, well, how many buttons is too low?
Yeah, that's a great question.
So here we could actually show. So how far? What do you think is too much showing?
Well, you're asking me. I go to Burning Man. I don't give a shit.
Oh, you're like, no, I could just be naked and it doesn't matter, right?
If anyone's doing a nudist podcast, I will do it. But yeah, I don't know. I think this, from an audience perspective, feels like too much. I
think it depends on the circumstance. It's 100 degrees outside.
That's
it's a warm room. We've got lights and stuff.
That's
it's
right.
not a big deal.
Yeah, quit judging me, you puritanical.
Exactly.
In Rochester, New York.
Yeah, we get a lot of Rochester, New York comments on this. They're be like, "Hey, I love Rochester." No, I think it depends. I mean, I think. It's weird because as a woman, it's never really been acceptable. There's a certain level of cleavage we're allowed to show in certain circumstances, but it is, I've never been able to feel free. I guess technically I have been to a couple nudist situations, but aside from those, I haven't really felt free enough to be able to like decide, am I going to show my nipples today or not? Because dudes are pretty much allowed to walk around shirtless.
Yeah, it's a bullshit double standard, and like women have to deal with. Can I speak for the women's perspective? I think about this sometimes because it's an unfair balance between I want to express myself and wear what I want and do what I want, mixed with men will be fucking creeps about it if I go too far, and that's such a tough balance because it can suppress expression because of the way people respond to you. Mm-hmm. So how much does expression matter to you versus rejecting the dredges of society?
Yeah, I think For me, I think it's also about freedom and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I used to do the naked bike ride in Chicago.
Hell yeah.
Did you ever do the one in New York?
I did not.
I didn't. To be fair, I didn't go fully naked because like riding on a bike seat as a woman fully naked,
100%.
not really like great. So I would wear like shorts, but I do like body paint and stuff, and it's just like more about a freedom thing. It's not about sexuality. I think people, because we grew up in America is so much like so repressed with that.
Yes.
That's why like when you go to England or you go to Europe, they're much more open and they don't care about nudity. Nudity is not a big deal. Like if a 6-year-old kid sees a tit, they're not freaking out.
Yes. Well, we were literally founded by the Puritans that left the sex-positive Europe to come here and be Quakers. Well, so it makes sense that America has this history and this cultural thread of puritanical nonsense. I think it's insane, but there's a historical precedent for it.
Well, yeah, and basically in Europe they sent the super religious people over to America, and then the criminals over to Australia. And which one built the better society?
That's very funny.
I think,
America, baby. I'm kidding.
But you spent a lot of time in Australia because you got family there, right?
Yeah, I think it is a phenomenal place to live. In fact, I think whatever's broken in me when I was there in my 20s, because my dad moved there about 20 years ago, and I never really wanted to live in Australia because life felt too easy. And, like, to me, that was unfamiliar. Like, I wanted strife. Like, I like traveling in the developing world.
What do you mean? Healthcare is free.
It's insane.
And you don't have to pay that much for college, and you can go and work in the EU and Canada, and what?
Yeah. I cannot have a job, and you will pay me for the rest of my life. That seems unfair. Ayn Rand taught me that I need to work and build. I don't know. Yeah, it's an amazing... I mean, I didn't know my dad as a happy person before he moved to Australia. I mean, literally changed his life.
So if you have an upset parents, guys, send them to Australia. Mm-hmm. They'll be happy.
Yes, it's a guarantee. This is the Justin and Sarah guarantee. Send your parents to Australia, and they'll be happy.
Paid for by the Australia Tourism Company.
Who is sponsored by the Oura Ring.
I haven't been to Australia yet, but I would like to go at some point. The closest I've been to, Cambodia or Vietnam is probably the closest I've been.
Geographically, yes. Culturally, I would argue.
Culturally, no, not closest culturally. Closest culturally, I guess somewhere in Europe, I would say. I mean,
probably UK, right?
Yeah, UK or Canada.
I mean, Australia is really a hybrid of the UK and America culturally. It's a very interesting thing, which is what makes it such an easily digestible culture shock, in my opinion. It's just a great place. It's a new country, so they have new cities that are built well. It's not like LA where they just kept duct taping a place to get bigger and bigger. Like, there's city planning in a way that we don't have, and there's better public spending, and you see it. It's fascinating. Yeah. But it's a really easy place. They're really great people. I love Australia, and I love making fun of Australia to Australians.
Can you do an Australian accent?
No.
The only thing I've done is I heard if you kind of chew, you can kind of do it, but that's about it, you know? I just think about Nicole Kidman at the AMC, you know? We come to this theater to...
Yes. You know, I've aborted trying to do an accent on stage long ago. My strengths. You know?
I can kind of do British, but like I'm not that great at it. Like if I have to do it, I like learn it and do it. And do it properly, write it out phonetically and all the stuff that, you know, you go to theater school and you look back at your notes for.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done accents for like small roles and stuff, and it's achievable. Yeah. I just don't, for stand-up, I don't know why. I don't, I'm not a huge act-out guy, and so I don't do it that often. Yeah. But I should definitely learn. I have so many jokes about Australia. It's crazy that I don't try to do the accent. Oh,
so I do tours. That's like my day gig aside from stand up until stand up's full time and all this. But so I get an Australian kid that we're talking. I always make a joke if there's Australians. I'm like, hey, you guys have the most dangerous animals in the country. You guys aren't going to be worried if we run into a snake on this hike or whatever. And like, no, you know, this 12-year-old girl told me how they had in their classroom, they had a shovel that they'd have in the corner. Yeah. They called a snake shovel. Yep. That basically, if anyone saw a snake, they grabbed the shovel and cut the snake's head off. 12 years old.
It's amazing.
Like that's the kind of, like, that is freaking bravery right there. Like, that is terrifying to me. They deal with, like, poisonous snakes and crazy spiders and, like, all this shit. And then they're just, like, the most chill people in the world. They're like, like, everything's fine.
It's so funny to me when Americans tell me that they don't want to visit Australia because there's too many animals that can kill you there. I'm like, as if murder spiders are worse than school shootings.
Exactly.
It's fine. They have shovels. You're going to be okay. It's crazy. But my dad actually lives in Tasmania in Australia, which is an island off of the mainland, and it's landscape-wise more closer to New Zealand. There's no outback. It's all green and mountains. So there's actually none of the murder stuff. I think there's one murder spider, actually. Is
it called murder spider? Like, I love that.
It's not a technical term.
It's like, I call them murder podcasts, even though, like, you know, they're mystery podcasts, they're, you know, serial killer podcasts, but, like, murder. It's about murder.
Yes. My dad has a farm in Tasmania. He's a Jew from the Bronx and now has a farm in Tasmania, Australia. So your life will turn into whatever you want it to be, apparently, because that's insane. But on the farm, there's like a little sunroom, and I found like a spider in there the first time I went there that's this big, and now we call it the spider room. Because they are crazy. They're crazy.
I'm terrified. That is like the big fear I have. I'm afraid of spiders, and I get that, yes, most of them might not hurt you, but it's just like, it's a thing that I am terrified
Not a fan. Yeah.
No, not a fan.
No.
Are there do you have any irrational, like, I feel like spiders, snakes, I think those are rational fears.
I agree.
Do you have any irrational fears?
All my fears feel quite rational to me.
Well, actually, I think everybody would say that, though, right?
Yeah. I don't look at any of them and be like I don't really, like, I just produced a horror, my first horror feature, which I think is really funny because I don't like watching horror movies because I don't like being scared.
But you like scaring other people.
I love the technical skill set of horror. Like, I used to write and produce a lot of promos for Comedy Central for movies coming out, and it was mostly comedy movies, but like 10 to 20% were horror movies because the structure of a horror and a comedy is kind of the same, which is you build tension and release. You build tension and release. So in the edit and the way that you shoot it, horror has so many fun tools to play with. So I love that aspect of it. But yeah, there were also times where I was on a mountain in West Virginia at 4 a.m. and I had to go pee in the woods, and I was terrified. So I get it if you don't want to watch my movie.
No, I like, I've gotten better at horror. So I realized I can't do body horror, but I can do pretty much any of it. And I love horror comedy.
Yes.
I saw The Blackening, who someone I knew from Chicago, Dwayne Perkins, helped create that. That came from a sketch from Three Pete, and then they did a sketch that was on Comedy Central, and then 6 years later is a full film.
Yes.
But the film is so great, you wouldn't think it came from a sketch. You know?
I love that.
But that was done really well. Other horror comedies I like Freaky, and Shaun of the Dead's one of my favorite movies all time.
Yeah.
So like that sort of level, and I could totally deal with more gore if it has comedy in it.
I agree. I need that release. I need the comedic release. I feel like, but I think that's me in everything. I think that's, you know, whatever it is, the Jewish heritage meets defense mechanisms as a child, which meets how I learn how to communicate with the world. Like, if I have a comedic release, any other story I think I can digest. I have a heart, like, even making this movie, which was we had a couple very funny moments that we were able to create in this movie, but it is more sincere than anything else I've ever made before. And there were times where I'd be listening to like dialogue scenes where I'd be like, can we get a joke in here, guys? Like, come on.
Yeah.
It's like, let's take some of this tension out of it. But that's just me. That's the comic in us too. Yeah. But I think that's true for anybody. I think comedy makes anything more accessible. That's what I love about stand-up, is that the comedy and punchlines make people listen to things they wouldn't otherwise listen to. Like when I go and perform in very conservative states and regions, and I'm just as liberal and progressive as I am now, but I release the tension by being very aware and address the difference in our points of view, they're way more willing to listen to the things that I have to say. And we have these great dialogues and conversations because of it. So that's my plug for, if you're going to make something scary, make it funny, or I'm not watching it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And let's see. Well, let's see. I'll ask. So the one thing we didn't cover is relationships. Are you in a relationship right now?
I'm not. I recently got out of a fairly long-term relationship.
Oh, sorry, that's hard.
So yeah, it's not great.
Sorry, brought it down. Sorry, downer. I'm sorry.
We started all the way down, and then we slowly clawed our way back up. No, it's okay. It's, you know, this is not about me, but so it's kind of a deflection, but also an interesting point. I made this documentary series about the future for Netflix, and one of the episodes in the original order was about the future of marriage. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we learned that I put in this episode that wasn't originally as part of our plan was I talked to this therapist about divorce. Mm. And her whole point of view, and the whole point of view that became a part of the story, was how misguided our perception of divorce is, because we all look at divorce or relationships ending as a failure. Mm-hmm. That is like our societal, cultural norm. And her whole thing was that's incorrect. We need to start looking at relationships ending as a positive, because you're separating from something that wasn't working for you, that wasn't making you happier, that wasn't expanding your life. And so if that is the case, then I think we all look at this as, I'm so sorry, and this is a tragedy. And it is, and it's sad, and it's hard. But there's also value to the hard things in life, right?
Well, I think it's also growth, because you think every relationship you learn and you become a better person for whatever reasons, I think from each relationship. I mean, maybe you don't learn. I'm sure some of my exes maybe didn't learn anything. I don't know. But I think you learn and grow through each one. So.
Yeah, 100%.
And also, to be honest, if I didn't have a horrendous breakup in my 20s, I might not have started stand-up, It's like, oh, that's what you do. You cut your hair, you travel to Europe, and then you start stand-up.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly it. Yeah, no, this is all part of the journey. I think it's so interesting, like living in one place for a long time, you feel very grounded. Like me in New York, I felt like I understood New York. I understood dating in New York. I had a long-term relationship that ended before I moved here. And then coming to a new city with a new culture and a new perspective, people date differently.
Oh,
the
yeah,
value sets are different.
LA, it's more like, hey, I've got my shit that I'm doing, and you're gonna come second or third, and that's what you got to deal with. And it's dating in LA is
it seems weird. I haven't done it much because I pretty much was in one relationship the whole time, but it seems incorrect.
Incorrect. Dating means so many things.
Yeah.
But we are starting to wind down the podcast a little bit. So because this is a sleep themed podcast, I always ask people, what are your dreams for the future? And you can take that however you want.
Oh wow. I think that professionally, all I ever want is the opportunity to say no. So think about like for stand-up, I always want to be getting booked enough stage time that I have to say no to something. You know what I mean? That's what I want. I want an abundance of opportunity. I want an abundance of development projects where something comes across my desk and I'm too busy to say yes. I want to be working on projects that I'm excited about. And that's really all. I think we get really attached, and I have been a lot in my career, of I want to do this, and I want this show, and I want this goal. But I think I've worked with so many dream shows with so many bad people. All I want is good collaborations with good people and to be making things I'm excited about. And I think everything else after that will come.
I think that's a great dream.
Thank you.
Part of me thought you were going to say, I hope that America turns it more into Australia with the way they have life.
If you watch my hour, you will see I very much think that, yes.
And is there, if you want to plug some places people can find you, social media, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, Justin Herman Comedy is my website, at Justin_Herman on Instagram, Justin Herman Comedy on TikTok. Come find me, come say hi.
Right. Well, thanks so much for doing the podcast. We always end by saying good night. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for listening to Sleeping with Sarah, where I slept with Justin Herman. To find out upcoming dates for Justin, go to justinhermancomedy.com. You can also check him out on Instagram, Justin_Herman, and Justin M. Herman on Twitter/X, and Justin Herman Comedy on TikTok. If you like the podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. Follow at Sleeping with Sarah on TikTok and YouTube, and at Sleeping with Sarah Pod on Instagram. Thanks to Josh Bryant for the music. Big shout out to Wolf Ramirez and the team at Jam in the Van. Please follow at Jam in the Van and check out their other podcasts and other live shows. I'll be releasing a new podcast each week, so tune in to find out who I have in bed with me next. If you want to find out more about me, go to sleepysarah.com or follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Sarah Albritton and TikTok at Sarah Albritton Comedy. Until next time, good night.
Sleeping with Sarah.